We have Vivian Rodriguez with us tonight for translation.
Sí, muy buenas noches y bienvenidos de parte de la Junta Directiva del Distrito Escolar de Santa Bárbara. Si hay alguien que necesita la ayuda de un intérprete, por favor levante la mano para darle un audífono. Gracias. Thank you.
Gracias. We also have headsets available for the hearing impaired. If anybody should need the use of those, please let us know. Then we will go to the introductions, proclamations, and/or presentations and recognitions.
And we do have one. As you'll notice from the entire front row here, I'm impressed that you're all here tonight. In January, I shared with the board the wonderful results of the WASC accreditation for La Cuesta School. As the board knows, the school could have achieved one of any three designations: a denial of accreditation, an initial or a candidacy toward accreditation, or an initial accreditation. And in fact, the wonderful news was that the school received an initial accreditation, which will be a 3-year process, and in 3 years, then they'll be going for a 6-year renewal on top of that. Well, with us tonight to comment on this very positive report and determination is Principal Kathy Abney and her entire staff. I am so pleased. Kathy?
Well, I didn't do this by myself, quite clearly, so. And I never travel alone when other people are, come on, guys. So really, I don't have a whole lot to say except that this is the culmination of a 10-year dream, and I've stood up before this board before, and I also during single plan presentations, and told you we were going to get accredited, and it really became possible when we moved to a single campus where we were able to create a master schedule and really focus on academic achievement and student instruction. And this team behind me is what made it happen. And Barbara had asked if we had a couple of students that would like to speak, and I know you have some questions for them. It's a hard process, but it's absolutely a validating process, and we were so excited. We got this news on Valentine's Day. Best Valentine's present ever. Alta Vista also went through the process, but that visit was later, and so we will be on the May 2nd and 3rd agenda. So I hope to have some very good news for you towards the end of May about Alta Vista also. So I will, let you ask questions of whoever you would like to ask questions of.
Well, thank you. First of all, I'd like to thank you for your leadership. I know how much work you've put into this. I know this was definitely something that you had as a goal, and you sort of planned to make this happen. But I also want to thank all those who are standing behind you, because I know that, yes.
Without them, it wouldn't have happened.
It also takes a lot of hard work and diligence and just over and over and over again, day in and day out, to make this happen by everyone. So thank you very much. And do you have students here?
We have 2 students here, Michaela Zamudio and Luis Lopez.
Could we ask the students to maybe just say a couple of words about how you feel about the school?
I told them they were going to have to talk, so don't, yeah.
La Cuesta is an excellent school. I've been able to completely prosper here. I've been able to flourish, and the teachers are excellent. They listen to you, and they talk to you individually. They don't talk over you, and they help you when you need help. They individually will tell you whether or not your grade needs to improve or if you're all right. And even if your grade does not need to improve, they will help you on opportunities in which you can improve yourself personally. La Cuesta is an excellent school. I got straight Fs in freshman year. I now have straight A's in the junior year. The teachers here help you prosper. There's no way that you cannot prosper at this school unless you are personally sabotaging yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and congratulations on that tremendous improvement. I know it had to take a lot of hard work on your part, too. So thank you.
La Cuesta is a really great school. I recommend it. to our students that are in need of credits, and they can really catch up, and if they're really focused on graduating, they can make it. I started off pretty bad too, and now I'm all A's also. Senior, about to graduate. And yeah, it's a real good school.
Great.
I have to tell you a quick story about Luis. He came to us last spring. We put him on a behavior contract because he wasn't going to school at all. And we thought, oh boy. Well, not only does he come to school all the time, we can barely get him out the door. He got caught up, and he was qualified to return to his home high school this semester and graduate from his home high school, and he opted to stay at La Cuesta. So I think that really speaks highly of the community that we've created, and the teachers and their caring. So more and more students are opting to stay, although there's a strong family commitment in many homes for, walking down the hill at Santa Barbara or, graduating at San Marcos and DP, and we also respect that. But it's been a pretty amazing journey, and lots more work in the next 3 years, but thank you for your support, and fabulous staff and fabulous kids.
Great. Well, thank you again, and I know not only do the students work hard, but I imagine that your parents, I don't know if any of your parents are here tonight, but I want to congratulate them too for the, would you stand up, please? Thank you. Parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, it takes a lot. So thank you, and we appreciate it. We look forward to hearing from you again in May. Okay. And if you guys want to see yourselves on TV, check out Channel 18 on Saturday at 5 o'clock. Okay, that brings us then to the superintendent report.
Well, Board, instead of the regular superintendent's report, I think it's important for me to comment on the importance of what we need to accomplish in the next couple of weeks to ensure the fiscal solvency of the district. We're devoting much of this meeting to that. We're devoting time next week, and the following week we hope to make our final decisions about that. There are a number of fine things going on in the district. I will just briefly touch on a few. We recently attended a Teachers Network Impact Grant Recognition dinner. 28 of our teachers received grants, or recipients of various grants, and it was just an amazing list. And the keynoter for the dinner was the Santa Barbara County Teacher of the Year, Marilyn Garza. And if you know Marilyn, you know she's always full of fun. Great science teacher at Santa Barbara Junior High, and boy, she brought her toys with her. Also, we had the Dos Pueblos High School team that won the Kern County Regional Science Bowl for the 3rd year in a row. The Dos Pueblos team comprised of Daniel Richmond, Andy Granatelli, Ian Goodman, Michael Feldman, and Daniel Gray were among the 150 students from 15 high schools participating in the event. Their coach is Chris Jones. He did a fine job once again. And their final question: which oceanic plate sits west of the South American plate, forming a convergent boundary? And the answer is the Nazca plate. And our team was correct in that, and it was the winning question. Well, we have a lot of performing arts events. Those events are listed on the side table and listed on our district website, if you'd like to put the camera on the district website, so that people can take a look at what's happening at our various high schools and junior highs this spring. But I'd like to comment, well, and of course, we have instruction proceeding in over 3,000 classrooms every day in this district, and just that process alone is a fine process. Over the next couple of weeks, the board will be faced with the daunting task of finding another $10 million to put on the table in budget cuts, and that is on the heels of making $20 million in cuts over the last 4 years. The cumulative impact of these budget cuts is huge. And it's besetting every district in the state. It's because of the state funding crisis, the state budget crisis, has been with us a number of years. We expect it to be with us for a number of years to come. I'm sorry that we're faced with such massive cuts. It's the worst I have seen in my 36 years in education, and I don't think it's over. Hopefully, we have some things in the works so that we might be able to weather the storm for this year. Going into the following year and the years after that, we will probably continue to make cuts. The good news about our plans is that if a couple of things occur, we may be able to pull back most, if not all, of those cuts, and it will be important to prioritize those cuts in 2 weeks' time so that we know which ones to pull back. The first thing that we're trying to accomplish is unification for our elementary and secondary districts. This is a Thompson unification. It does not include the other feeder elementary districts, which is what the Thompson bill was all about. And the other districts have opted out of unification with us. Big surprise. That unification would bring us another $6 million in if we are successful with that, and it is well underway. It's in the works. If we are successful with that, hopefully this spring, then that will be the first $6 million in cuts we will be able to bring back. The other, of course, is any change in the state budget, although the state budget health is predicated largely upon a ballot initiatives in June, which would extend what are currently temporary taxes on the citizens in the state of California. And if the voters are willing to extend those taxes, then we will be able to bring back most, if not all, of the rest of those cuts for this year. The fiscal solvency plan which is on tonight's agenda is full of items which have been already accomplished in other districts. It's full of services and programs that have been cut in the last year or the last 2 years by other districts. And in the past, we went forward with the whole process of going out to get ideas from people. We were able to gather a couple of $1 million worth of ideas. It certainly wouldn't take us to $10 million. Eric Smith in the business office had made a lot of operational cuts. Most of those were away from the classroom. But as the board knows, these cuts are real. They affect real programs. They affect students. They affect our teachers and instructional staff. So the cumulative impact of these budget cuts can be devastating to any district, and we, of course, take them with great seriousness. That is yet to come on tonight's agenda. And that's it for tonight's superintendent's report.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sarvis. Those are some sobering comments for us, and we are going to be dealing with that throughout this meeting and throughout the next month. So we will be looking at some fairly difficult decisions that we're going to be having to make. That moves us on then to announcement of closed session action. We have no, I'm sorry, did I skip something? Oh, I'm sorry, board comments and correspondence. Do we have any comments or correspondence? No, oh, see, I was psychic. I just knew we didn't. So, announcement of closed session action. We have no reportable actions out from the closed session. So that brings us to public comment. Do we have public comment?
Yes, we have one public comment, Joan Esposito.
Ms. Esposito, you'll have 3 minutes.
Yeah. Good evening. Joan Esposito from the Dyslexia Awareness and Resource Center. We're the only agency in this town that advocates free of charge for children with dyslexia, learning disabilities, and attention deficit disorder. These parents have nowhere to go. I want to read something to you from a complaint I just filed with the State Department of Education. I've been filing compliance complaints with your district in-house for the last 2 years, but I don't have the manpower or the staff anymore to file complaints in the district because nothing's happening with them. I just filed an 18-page complaint to the State Department of Education a week ago, and Superintendent Solvency, I delivered a copy to your office. If the board members really want to know what's going on in your district and to these children, please get a copy from Dr. Sarvis or Dr. Kerry Mills, copy of the complaint. I think you'd find it very revealing. You know, a little over a year ago, we all remember when 4 students in the district committed suicide and 10 attempted suicide. I want to read a statement to you of one of the reasons why I filed this complaint with the state. This boy recently said to his mother after he came out of juvenile court hall, "Mom, I don't want to live anymore. I'm not smart. I'm stupid. It's my fault I make you so much trouble. If any truck will run over my body, it would be good. I don't want to live anymore." He was crying and crying. He said, "Mom, I'm sorry, Mommy. I don't want this life. I want a different life, but I don't know how." I've been at the doctor with this boy twice, okay, in the last 3 weeks. This boy came into the district when he was a special ed student, actually, before kindergarten. He was having got speech and language. Then he was identified, I think it was 2nd grade, with a learning disability. After 11 years in special education, you've now labeled him with an emotional disability on his IEP, a lack of services. Okay? If you remember the FICMAT report, and Ed, I think you'll remember this, the FICMAT report investigator said that students are coming into this district with a learning disability and they come out with personality disorders. That is certainly what has happened to this young man. Okay? This mother can't afford an attorney. She speaks very little English. She lives in one room.
30
with
seconds.
Pardon, how long?
30 seconds.
She lives in one room with a teenage boy. She has 2 jobs. She can't afford an attorney. All of her son's IEPs and assessments for the last 10 years, since he's been in this district, are all in English. She doesn't understand what's going on with him. He's in juvenile court today. I noticed that you have, on your closed session today, you have legal counsel. I guess they're concerning students with disabilities. This mother can't afford legal counsel.
Thank you, Mrs. Esposito.
Oh, thank you very much. Would you like to give me some extra time? Because I think it's a very serious case. We're talking about a boy who possibly could commit
Ms.
suicide.
Esposito, if you have additional comments that you'd like to make to the board, you can submit them to us in writing, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your concern.
That brings us to acceptance of donations.
And I'll see that the board gets a copy of that complaint.
Okay.
Move to approve with gratitude. Second?
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. On the consent agenda, we will be pulling item D8, and we will be returning this item to a future board meeting agenda. Are there any other items that board members would like to pull?
I would like to pull D5 and D12, and there's one small correction on the minutes of February 8th.
D5 and D12, did you say?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Before we address those minutes, can we see if there are any other items that board members want to pull?
I have a simple question on D7.
Okay. And also, I'd like to note that we have an additional attachment to item D13. It's on our dais. Looks like this. Okay. Okay, so with no others to pull, we can address the minutes. If you had a correction on the minutes.
On page 404 of the minutes of February 8th, it just, it lists me as both here and absent. I wish I could be in 2 places at the same time.
You are talented. We will
Haven't
correct
mastered that one
Thank
yet.
you.
Okay, and
On
Mr. Heron, you had a question on D7?
On D7 under stipends, there's 4 baseball coaches where the amount is to be determined. Who determines that, and why is it to be determined, and why didn't we get numbers?
I don't know. I don't have an answer to that. We can get the answer to that and get it to you. Yes. In total.
It's not, and that's why I asked the question. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, do we have, Mr. Herron, were you wanting to pull that item
No,
or just,
no,
okay?
I got my answer.
Okay. Do we have a motion on this item, on the consent agenda?
I'll move to approve the remaining items on the consent agenda and the minutes as corrected.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. I believe that we are including everything on the consent agenda except for D5 and D12 and D8, which has been pulled. Okay? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. So that brings us to the action agenda. For those in the audience, we will return to those items that we pulled off the consent agenda at the conclusion of the meeting. The action agenda, we have item E1, selection of candidates to serve on the Measure Q 2010 and Measure R 2010 Bond Citizens Oversight Committees. Dr. Sarvis, would you like to explain this item?
Certainly. We do need citizens oversight committees. We have a number of slots or a number of seats on each of those committees. They are, by our bylaws, to be comprised of representatives who are from the business community, senior citizen groups, Taxpayers Association, a bona fide Taxpayer Association, I believe it is, parents, parent and PTA, Santa Barbara Education Foundation, and community members. We have Barbara Chiani with us, who's been processing these applications. We have some people in the community who have submitted their applications, and we have a fairly good list here. Some of these people you've already seen on Measures H and I, and if they're accepted onto these committees, they will be leaving H and I, and we will come back to H and I then. And yes, would you please come up to the
A question on
podium?
that?
Yes.
Aaron?
The way I read the bylaws, you can be on both. Is that?
You can be on both,
So
yes.
it would come back to if they resign from the one.
Although we have heard from people who
Oh,
have said,
okay.
you know, I'm applying to one of these other oversight committees, and if that's successful, I will be resigning from H or I.
Mrs. Chiani?
Just so you're aware that there's one person who provided an application for both committees, and I don't know that he necessarily wanted to serve on both. He just wanted to let you know that he would be amenable to whichever committee you chose him for.
Thank you. Board members? Ms. Parker?
Well, I also noticed that one is an employee of the district for the secondary, but that's not permitted, correct?
Correct.
All right, so that pulls Hania Jeremiah right off the list.
Additional questions or comments? Ms. Deegan?
I believe Mr. Bailey is the individual you
Yes.
referred to who was willing to serve on both. It looks like we need him on the elementary. But I'm a little concerned because we only have 5 applicants for elementary. There's a husband and wife team. I'm not sure that's something necessarily we would want. And I'm wondering if maybe we need to reopen the application process because I think we need some more folks. Basically, we don't have anyone in the Taxpayers Association group. We only have one senior represented, so
Yes.
I'm wondering if that might not be a good idea.
My assumption is that you would, because we don't have enough candidates really to pull from to fill the 7 slots. I have approached the Taxpayers Association, or 2 members, about 10 days ago and asked them if they could please help us with names. So I envision that I'll be coming back to you, but at least we will have started the process.
I also have a concern along those lines for the elementary district. We have 3 out of the 5 are associated with Adams School. And that is worrisome to me because I want to make sure that the perception in the community is that all the schools are being represented fairly and sort of, you know, maybe not equally, but at least sort of, you know, a representative group of people from a variety of different schools. Given that, you know, 60% of the committee so far is from one school, that makes me nervous about appointing all 3 of them.
Yes.
And I share your concern about a husband and wife being on a committee that oversees the distribution of funds.
That was Mrs. Deacon's concern. I don't want to take credit where if credit is not
Sorry.
But yes, we can certainly reopen this and ask principals to perhaps identify candidates from, or potential applicants, and call and encourage them to, do some follow-up and encourage them to apply.
Perhaps I should, go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, one of my questions was, for the secondary district, we're obviously missing a taxpayers association person, but we have one in every other category, except, so there's kind of just one extra, essentially. These are all great candidates, the way I look at it. And I'm wondering if one of the parent candidates in the secondary district, and I'm actually thinking of Katie Jacobs in particular, because she was so involved at Washington, if she might consider, just something to ask, if she might consider stepping up and kind of, obviously she's no longer a Washington parent, but since she was so involved in the elementary district, if it would still count as a parent, do they have to be, that specific age, or?
She needs to be, we need to have a candidate who is a parent and PTA member at that level.
In that district, right? In the elementary district.
Right.
Well, I wonder if she could then come in maybe as a community member.
That would be a possibility.
In the elementary district, so that we could seek, if we just want to take one parent from Adams, or PTA parent, whichever of those two categories, then we could try to seek out parents from, or at least one other parent from a different school.
Yeah, actually, Board, for those of you who were here at the time that we appointed citizen oversight committees for H and I, we didn't have a full slate of candidates in our first meeting. We did go ahead and appoint some of the positions. That told us who to go looking for, and we were able to fill that out within, well, actually, it took another 2 meetings before we got the additional candidates to you. So if you'll help us make decisions like that, then we can go back to these people and ask them if they'd be willing to serve on the other committee or represent some other group. That's good.
For the.
Sorry, Ms. Parker, I was looking at my list.
For the secondary committee, I really felt like it was just a little math puzzle. And I can list off where I thought that we could, because I really thought the candidates were all good, that we could put Michael Jordan in for business, Linda Meyer for the senior citizens group, Mark Ingalls for the parent, Francine Graves for the parent plus PTA, Sal Guarena for the Santa Barbara Ed Foundation, and then Carlos Martinez for the community member. And then see if Katie Jacobs might be interested in helping with our needs in the elementary district.
What was the first one you listed, Ms. Parker?
Michael Jordan for the
Michael.
business,
Okay.
because I really felt that Joe Bailey, we needed him so badly down in the elementary district that he would fit down there.
If that was a motion, I'll second it.
That was a motion.
Is that a motion?
I move that we appoint people as listed.
Okay, did everybody get the members that
Got it.
Mrs. Parker
No, she's
identified?
the
Okay.
senior.
Okay, and that would not include Mr. Bailey?
Mr. Bailey, because I would
Wait.
ask that he go to the elementary district.
Okay.
And it would not include Katie Jacobs, because I would ask that she
That she would
consider-
also go? Okay.
Oh, because she got pulled. She's a Santa Barbara High
She's
employee.
an
Yeah.
employee, so she was disqualified because she's an employee of the district. Okay. Does everybody understand the motion? Did we have a second?
Yes, Mr. Aaron.
Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0.
Okay.
Okay, do we want to move to the elementary district? Mr. Bailey has indicated that he would be interested in serving on that, so I think we could appoint him.
Okay.
What about the rest of them?
Well, I think Brian Robinson for sure for the Santa Barbara Ed Foundation. I think we need to put him in the Santa Barbara Ed Foundation since that was the only applicant we had in that category. For the other three, those are all terrific candidates. Any one of those parents from Adams, I think, would be good. My suggestion would just be to kind of look at gender balance at that point, since we had appointed, we know for sure that there will be 2 males on this committee. And so I would suggest that we put in Allison Bell as either a parent or a parent PTA, depending on what Ms. Kiani is able to find. And if Katie Jacobs, I'd be willing to move that we provisionally appoint her as a community member if she's willing to accept that
Okay.
for the elementary district.
All right.
I'll second that.
Okay, so all of those does everybody understand this motion? Okay. All of those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries 5-0.
Okay, and just to be clear, on Ellison Bell, you said either as a parent or a parent PTA, depending on where the rest of them fall?
Yeah.
Okay,
And we are missing a number of people in the elementary district, a senior representative, and taxpayer association, which we are also missing in the
Correct.
secondary. I also wonder, I don't know, because I'm not familiar with each person in the elementary district list, if any of these people are bilingual or bicultural. I know that we do have some on the secondary district group. So I'd like us to maybe make a particular push to get representatives from the Latino or Spanish-speaking
okay,
community to serve.
I'll work on that too.
Thank you. Okay, any additional questions or comments on this item? No? All right. Thank you, Mrs. Kiani. We appreciate your work on this.
Yeah, thank you.
Item E2, approval of naming the conference room at the Ealing Center for the Engineering Education the Change Happens Meeting Room.
Well, we're pleased to bring this proposal to you. We have Sandy Seal with us, who's from the Dos Pueblos Engineering Foundation. And I think I would do a better job of having Sandy present this than myself.
Well, David's not here. This is really his item.
This is David's item.
It's David's item. So we've received a $250,000 donation. I have good news tonight. From the Change Happens Foundation. They are a national level foundation that supports education. That money is going to go towards the purchase of capital equipment and furniture for the building, since the building is underway. There are 3 classrooms left. The price of a classroom is $250,000. So there are 3 left that can be named. And after discussing it with our board and with their board, we picked the conference room because that's actually the entrance to the building. And we thought it was kind of nice that change happens the minute you step in the door. So they like that idea too. And if you don't mind, I just want to read you the quote from their board because it's kind of nice. The mission of the Change Happens Foundation is to act as a meaningful catalyst towards positive change in our global community. The foundation funds the development and implementation of innovative technology and progressive ideas to generate a positive force for change in our world. Doug Troxell, the president and CEO of Change Happens, said this about awarding this donation. The Change Happens Foundation and the Troxell family consider it a privilege to assist such a worthy cause. At a time when public education in America has its challenges, the Dos Pueblos Engineering Academy stands ready to teach its students in the best collaborative methods. Troxell also said it was immediately obvious during my visit that the enthusiasm for learning at DPEA is contagious. As long as we have teachers like Amir and parents who take responsibility for educating their children, we will pass the baton to the next generation with a smile. And you guys get a lot of credit for that too. I think, a supportive school district is one of the legs of the table that holds this thing up. So our capital campaign total with that donation is $2,762,000 out of $3 million. So we have $238,000 left to go. We've set ourselves a goal of doing that by this summer. July 1st is my personal deadline for that. So I can answer any questions. Not all questions, but some questions.
First of all, thank you very much. We like to have this kind of news in the middle of some of our other more dire
Yeah.
information that we get. Are there any questions or comments? Ms. Deacon?
I have to really commend your organization on your enterprise, because no matter how bad the economy gets, you keep finding these
We're
sources.
very aggressive.
Is this a local, I recognize the name, is this a local family?
The
or-
Troxel family owns Serena Software, and they have a home here, but they're not based here.
Okay. So did you seek them out? They
Yes.
found you? You did?
No, we
Okay.
went after
Well,
them.
congratulations
Thank you.
on that. More success ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, it now looks doable. I feel like I can see the light.
You think you can raise 10 million more?
I do feel like, given the right platform, we could just keep rolling, but we are anxious to put the capital campaign behind us, because since Amir won the MacArthur, we really have resources raining down on us in the programmatic side of things. And we would like to put our energy into using all of that in the best way possible, for the district. So that means capital, has to be wrapped up fairly soon.
Okay,
That's
well,
the
we
goal.
certainly appreciate the work you've done in that area.
Oh, thank you.
That's been so phenomenal. Okay, all right, well, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you very much.
Well, great, we'll get the roof on that building.
Okay, so do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve the naming of the conference room at the Ealing Center for Engineering Education, the Change Happens Meeting Room.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, abstentions, motion carries 5-0. Okay, so now you have 3 classrooms left. All right, that brings us to item E3, approval of resolution number 2010/11-38 in support of placing a revenue extension measure on the June 11 state ballot.
This is a resolution urging state legislators to put this on the ballot, and it will take a 2/3 vote in order to do that. So we need a big push on this. As I said earlier, the governor's budget proposal for next year, 2011-2012, includes a proposal for a state ballot initiative to extend current tax revenues that would support education and other programs. As we reported at, I believe it was our last meeting when we were looking at the governor's proposal and the effect on our budget, we currently anticipate a loss of $19 per student. If something like this does not get approved, then we would further anticipate a loss of, I believe it was $320 per student, and, $335 per student, thank you, and that would be big. I mean, that would amount to some $4 million in our districts. So we're asking you to approve this resolution. If there are any changes, revisions you'd like to suggest, we're certainly open to that as well. But we'd like to move this forward. There are other organizations, including California Teachers Association, CSBA. In fact, this is a sample resolution from CSBA that we use to formulate this, and AXA, California School Administrators, that are doing the same thing.
All right, comments or questions from the board?
Well, I would, furthering that table analogy, I will just say that getting this on the ballot is maybe the first leg on this table to our salvation, and so I absolutely think, we should do this. I hope it helps. What really needs to happen is pressure needs to be brought to bear on the legislators to make sure that they understand how significant this will be. So I actually will go ahead and make a motion. There may be discussion, but I'll go ahead and move to approve Resolution 2010-11-38 in support of placing a revenue extension measure on the June 2011 state ballot.
Is there a second?
I'm happy to go ahead and second that, but I do want to have a little further discussion
Okay,
on it.
we have discussion?
This, if it's passed, will go to, I assume it will go to
This will go to our legislators.
Our legislators?
Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to be really specific about who gets it. I I'm very confident that our newly elected Assemblyman Dasa Williams will support the extensions going on the ballot in June. I am not confident about our state senator, Tony Strickland, and I think beyond this, I think it's important that we each individually also contact his office and that members of our community contact Tony Strickland's office because the role he plays could be critical. And I think it behooves all of us who care about education, who don't want these cuts to come forward, to step up and make our voices heard, particularly with somebody who represents us so that he knows how we feel about this.
Well said, thank you.
And-
Ms. Lamone?
And I will echo what Mrs. Parker said, and also hope that our district can work with the community to get some message points around why it's so important, the impacts it will have above and beyond what we're dealing with tonight. And I think it'll be important to engage the entire community, both in Spanish and English-speaking community, to ensure that we do beyond contacting our legislators, but really get that messaging out. So,
Right.
Barbara.
Thank you.
Work with the community. I'm looking at you because I know you're going to probably take the lead on messaging around this issue.
All right, no further discussion? Or, yes, further
I
discussion?
have already had contact with representatives from Mr. Strickland.
Great, thank you. Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. That moves us on to item E4, approval of board action on student discipline case numbers 10/11-25, 10/11-26, 10/11-27, and 10/11-29. Ms. Parker?
I'll go ahead and move that in case 10/11-25, we uphold the findings and recommendations of the Administrative Hearing Panel for a one-school year expulsion.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second?
Okay, any discussion on that item? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0.
In case 10/11-26, I move that we uphold the findings and recommendations of the Administrative Hearing Panel for one school year expulsion.
Is there a second? Was that a second, Mr. Herron? Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0.
In case 10/11-27, I move that we uphold the findings and recommendations of the Administrative Hearing Panel for a one school year expulsion.
I will second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0.
In case 10/11-29, I move that we uphold the findings and recommendations of the Administrative Hearing Panel with the addition that the board finds that the student violated code, Education Code 48915C3, and as a result will expel for one calendar year. And we also note that all students always have the option to petition for early admission when there's a one calendar year expulsion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry, we're having a little question about speaker slips. Okay, yes.
I think that, I understood there was a speaker who wanted to speak about YSS. I think that's item F2, unless I'm mistaken. Is there someone who wanted to speak to an item we haven't had yet? F1. F1? Sorry, I meant F1.
It wasn't so much an item, we just thought we were coming for public comment.
Probably F1.
Yes, we will be doing that in just a second. Thank you, yes. Okay, so what? Oh, Okay, so this item is item F1, the first reading of the fiscal solvency plan, phase 5. And this is our big ticket item tonight. So, do we want to go directly to
Yes,
Mr. Smith?
Deputy Superintendent Eric Smith will make this presentation. Board, we intend to use this as a means to engage you in conversation about upcoming cuts. You know that we have to reach a goal of $10 million. We expect to do that in just 2 weeks' time. We have time this next Tuesday for additional discussion about these items. And there may be items that you'll want us to pencil out in a different way. There may be other additional items you'll ask to be considered on the list. And with that, Deputy Superintendent Smith.
Thank you, Dr. Sarvis. You know, contrary to public opinion, I didn't have hair 3 years ago when I started this process, but we've made over $20 million in cuts in the last 3 years, and I like to say there's no correlation between me being here and those cuts happening, but it just so happens that the state's financial picture continues to deteriorate, and we're placed in the unfortunate position of making expenditure reductions to preserve the fiscal integrity of the school districts. What you have in front of you is phase 5 of the fiscal solvency plan. By way of introduction, twice each year, the board is asked to certify financial interim reports, and in doing so, they have to certify whether they can meet current year obligations and subsequent 2-year fiscal obligations and still meet the minimum reserve requirement, which is 3%. As part of that certification, the board's asked to either positively certify that they can do that, certify qualified that they may be able to do that, or certify negative that they definitively cannot do that. In December, we brought forward the first interim report for fiscal year 10-11 with a positive certification. In that particular interim report, we certified positive even though there was a structural deficit of $5.6 million. Our rationale behind being able to certify positive is because in the last 3 years, the board has always made the cuts to come together with a balanced budget and submit that to the county education office, who has oversight over the school districts. Knowing that we had a $5.6 million structural deficit, we thought we'd be going into the spring looking potentially at making $5.6 million, potentially if our unification became effective by July 1st, maybe $6 million in new revenue would obliterate that structural deficit. Once we knew that we had the structural deficit of $5.6 million in December, on the heels of that, we were hit with the governor's budget in January. Well, the governor's initial proposal, which basically is to close a $25 billion state budget gap, is actually done in 2 ways. Half of it through expenditure reductions, primarily through social services, realigning programs, shifting them to cities and counties, and half of it through a proposed revenue enhancement measure, which is actually the extension of about $8.1 billion in temporary taxes that are scheduled to expire in June. So, in the event that the revenue proposal does not fly, either it fails to get out of the legislature or fails to receive voter approval, we're looking at about $349 per ADA, or another $4.6 million in lost revenue. When you add 4.6 million and 5.6, you get to 10 million. So that's where we are. So our best case scenario is that the unification becomes effective by July 1. We get our waivers passed by the State Board of Education, and the County Committee on School District Organization basically determines that our petition is sufficient, and that all happens by July 1. Well, that's roughly $6 million in ongoing revenue. That, coupled with hopefully the tax measures get out of the legislature, get approved by the electorate, that means we avoid $4.6 million in lost revenue. So we're back to almost zero at that point. That's the best case, but unfortunately we have to plan for the worst case, and that's what we have in front of you. So what I'd like to do is walk you through the plan assumptions, a little section on cash management, and then, as is customary, we've broken up the expenditure reductions in terms of revenue enhancements, budget craftsmanship, reductions in support personnel, reductions in program administration, et cetera, et cetera. So the first issue is a thorough understanding of the plan assumptions. And I probably should point out that this plan is not exhaustive. It was limited by the time we could spend on it. I'm sure you're going to have either questions or clarifications, and you might even have things you want to add to the plan. And, you know, that's fine. We don't have such ownership that we don't realize that the plan, you know, can be improved, and we hope it is. First, the average total compensation, that's both salary, medical, and statutory benefits for classroom teachers in fiscal year 10-11 is $86,730. The average total compensation, medical, and statutory benefits for classified employees is estimated to be $56,500. We estimate that the elementary district will remain in basic aid status barely. However, the secondary district will remain significantly in revenue limit status. If we unify, we'll be in revenue limit status probably as far as we can see. Estimated cost savings have been rounded. Savings are identified as ongoing unless explicitly identified as one time. For the purposes of the plan, expenditure reductions and revenue enhancements are both construed as savings. Only the savings to the unrestricted side of the general fund is quantified, even though some savings may accrue to the restricted general fund. Savings are identified by district. However, Education Code Section 35110 allows us to combine financial report, and that's how we do that. No Measure H or Measure I funds are being used to offset expenditure reductions. We do have an item there that talks about budget craftsmanship where we might shift permissible expenditures into Measure H, but that'll be the board's discretion. Certain items contained in the plan are negotiable and will require the cooperation of our employee associations to implement. In the event that the board approves these items and fail to negotiate their implementation, the board will need to adopt additional measures to reduce expenditures or enhance revenues equal to the dollar value of those items that could not be negotiated. Revenue limit and state categorical deficits are applied with the School Services of California DART Board. A little bit on cash management. Symptomatic of organizations that experience continuing deficit spending, cash becomes a concern, and that's the state of the state with the state of California. The state's general fund has borrowed internally from other funds, undertaken external borrowing, and engaged in gimmickry, such as using deferrals to move school district apportionments from one fiscal year into another to reduce the Prop 98 guarantee. This all creates impacts for us in terms of cash. Primarily because we are largely revenue limit based because the secondary district and revenue limit. We still receive state apportionments, but then also taxes twice a year. So we start incurring expense, the largest portion is September when teachers come back in the payroll, but we kind of have a dribble in terms of state apportionment, and then we have to wait until the big chunks of taxes come twice a year. That's why we usually use trans, where we can actually do external borrowing and then pay that back by year end. But what happens anytime the state starts monkeying around with your apportionment, it creates adverse impacts on your cash. So last year when we went out for our trans, one of the issues that came up with Standard & Poor's, which is the rating agency, was, hey, where's your alternative liquidity? What kind of money do you have in other funds? Well, we had no money in other funds. And we were able to eke out enough where they were actually satisfied that we could get a trans. Obviously, our situation is radically different now because of Measure Q and Measure R. We do have alternative liquidity, meaning that we could temporarily borrow and pay that back if we had to. That's not our plan. Our plan is always to get a trans, but it's just an issue, and it's an issue for school districts across the state of California. So our first section are mid-year adjustments on page 4, and our mid-year adjustments are for fiscal year 10-11, and most of these are one-time in nature with the underlying premise to increase fund balance to help our reserves. The first one is to reimburse the general fund for 2 debt service payments made on behalf of the Washington Portable Project. I think the board's aware that we entered into a municipal lease agreement, and I'm not going to get into why we had to do that, but we've made 2 debt service payments on that municipal lease. The bond measure contemplates paying that off. We believe that the bond measure can also pay back those 2 debt service payments. That's about $214,000. Similarly, the general obligation bonds can basically reimburse us for eligible expenditures made out of the general fund 18 months prior to the date of issuance. And so what you're seeing here is we've identified on the Appendix A a list of permissible expenditures made out of either the deferred maintenance fund, which is technically unrestricted because of the flexibility period, or the unrestricted general fund, which we would reimburse the general fund from bond proceeds, but then we would use our freed up refunding proceeds to backfill the amount that the GO bonds, Q&R, would have lost. So actually the refunding, having that kind of liquidity now is actually helping us, even though we have to kind of hopscotch and put things, connect the dots to get there. So that will get us about $905,000 in one-time revenue. Sweep the remaining fund balance of instructional materials account. In fiscal year 8-9, school districts were granted the flexibility to transfer categorical funds, what are called Tier 3 categorical funds, to the unrestricted side of the general fund. We've done an analysis of what we have in the instructional materials fund, knowing that textbook adoptions were also suspended as part of this. We've identified $250,000 there that could be swept to the unrestricted general fund. And then we have kind of an outlier here because it didn't fit in 10-11, but it was one time in nature for 11-12. Our purchasing department was able to negotiate a reduction in per-click copier costs on a one-time basis, and so that will occur in fiscal year 11-12. It's one time $150,000. So those were all one time, and they were explicitly identified as such. Moving on to budget craftsmanship and revenue enhancements. We've had a previous discussion about the number of FTEs it takes to actually accomplish getting to 9th grade math CSR. We believe that the unrestricted general fund is underwriting this at a greater extent than what Measure H originally contemplated, by at least 3.5 FTEs. One option would be able to shift those out of the unrestricted general fund into Measure H for 9th grade class size reduction math. That would have an impact on other course offerings, and so that's a decision the board would have to make. That would free up about $303,000. Item B is transfer remaining 70% of the Tier 3 categoricals to the unrestricted general fund. As you recall, in 8-9, an analysis we did was looking at how much personnel we had identified or basically attached to the Tier 3 categoricals and how much was discretionary, meaning in the 4s, 5s, and 6s. Based on that analysis, we took 30% because people weren't attached. Well, we're in a different place now. Most districts have moved 100% of their Tier 3 categoricals over to the unrestricted general fund. Obviously, there are some things embedded in the Tier 3 categoricals that the board might not want to move over, and we kind of provided you with a generic description that you might want more detail on, but we did identify some of the program implications in the narrative here. There might be some more, but we've also given you some options in terms of percentage of this reduction. Obviously, if you took the whole 70%, the remaining 70%, that's close to $3.5 million. Budget 2011-12 mandated cost reimbursements. For the first time in a very long time, we have a governor who's actually proposing to pay mandated cost, at least current year claims with current year revenue. It doesn't address the roughly $1.1 billion in backlog of mandated cost reimbursements. But since the governor's proposing it, we think that's a good faith effort. It's also something we see that's probably going to happen on an ongoing basis because obviously it's a change in philosophy. I know that the county office will probably not like this because, they want you to budget mandated costs on cash receipt basis, but we're scraping, so I'm taking everything I can. Item D is transfer supplemental hourly funding. This is also considered under Tier 3, but not in the Tier 3 pot that we identified in the previous item. If we moved our supplemental hourly funding, with the exception of Casey, obviously we'd have a reduction in, intercession, remedial, all these things. Summer school, but it would generate about $371,000. Our next section on page 8 is administrative reductions. We'd taken a look at this at a previous plan. Obviously, I don't think our movement in ratios was extreme, but one of the things we started looking at was some data that was compiled by the California Department of Ed on both administrative ratios and pupil service ratios. In this particular scenario, we're talking about moving from an administrative ratio of students to administrators from 500 to 1 to 751. That would be a reduction of 2.8 FTEs in terms of site administration. And that would generate $307,000. Moving on to support service reductions, one of the things we looked at, it's very difficult to go back to the same areas over and over again. Obviously, maintenance took a sizable reduction last year, but there are areas that have not been reduced in the last 3 or 4 years. Even though as unpleasant as it was, we were forced to look at those. The first one is actually reducing site clerical by 33%, which seems kind of extreme, so we gave you a 50% of that. But if you did reduce by 33%, that's $1.2 million. Reduce custodial staffing by 33%. Implicit in this is going to an alternate day cleaning schedule. As you see, what we would have is cleaning Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then following week, Tuesday, Thursday. It would generate $1.2 million. It's done in a lot of districts. It's been done in districts I've been in. It can be implemented. Reduce ground staffings by 50%. I had to choke on this because by any measurement, we're really understaffed in grounds, but as I said, we're looking at everything. If you did reduce ground staffing by 50%, that'd be $549,000. Eliminate 3 classified support positions at the district office. That's $144,343. Item 10 is eliminate school health assistants in lieu of eliminating school nurses. The thought here is those items are kind of joined because if you're going to eliminate one, you're not going to eliminate the other, or you might curtail both. As you can see, this is a survey we did a couple of years ago. We did update it. There wasn't a whole lot of change. It is something that's kind of particular to the South Coast in terms of nursing and health assistants. I haven't seen it in a lot of other districts in terms of this level, but it seems to be something that's prevalent in the South Coast. So if you did reduce those, it'd be $584,000. Reduce library technicians by 30%. As you can see, that would be a savings of $278,000, or $6,000 rather. And then we move over to program reductions. Eliminate school nurses in lieu of school health assistants, $517,439. Reduce certificated library services by 30%, $197,763. Eliminate 2 district-funded but site-based program specialists, $143,830. Increase our student-to-counselor ratio from 384 to 681. As the board knows, we did increase that ratio a few years ago. But once again, if you look at what's going on a statewide basis, it's significantly richer than what's happening on a statewide basis. If you move to 681, and that's basically what the statewide average was in fiscal year 2008-2009, that would save $849,547. Increase 9th grade class size reduction from 25 to 1 to 35 to 1. This is not a Measure H parcel tax issue. This is a board discretion item. The board actually chose a few years ago to move 9th grade English class size reduction from 20 to 1 to an average of 25 to 1. You have the ability to basically take it to 35 to 1 because that's what the contract language is at. That would save you about $402,427. Increase class size in grade K3 from 25-1 to 30-1. This would be negotiable because our contract reverts to 26-1. But presuming we can negotiate this, this would actually save about $1.1 million. Increased staffing ratio at MAD. We have a partnership academy. We have an MOU with the partnership academy that limits class size to 25-1. We think this is a conservative number. If we moved it to 30-1, which we've had ongoing discussions with, that would save us $78,000 because it increases the number of sections that we could fill at 30-1. And reduce the number of credits from 240 to 220 to meet high school graduation requirements. At Dos Pueblos and Santa Barbara High, we require 240, they take 240. At San Marcos, it's 240. We're staffed to actually serve 320 because of the way the schedule is set up. If we move from 240 to 220, we would be reducing electives. Whether we could do that all in one time or we'd have to phase it in would have to be considered. For presuming we could do it all at once, then it would be $684,000 in savings. And obviously, board policy would have to be revisited in that respect. Reduce the school year, but not instructional time. The governor's education trailer bill is going to continue to provide flexibility relative to decreasing the instructional year from 180 to 175 like it has since 2008-9. We've looked at what would occur if we actually reduce from 185 to 175 but increase the number of minutes in each day, and we have a lot of backup calculations on this. Obviously, this is a negotiable item. Also implicit in this, there'd be a reduction because there'd be less days worked. We also have information on basically a parallel amount of furlough days for classified and also for admin. We have that available if you want to see that as well. Based on this, which is just certificated, it'd be $4.1 million in savings. So,
Mr. Smith, on that item, just because of the way it's been reported, I wanted to emphasize that this movement would be from 180 instructional days to 175 instructional days. So it would be a change of 5 instructional days for our students, and by adding instructional minutes to each of those 175 days, there wouldn't be any reduction in time, as Mr. Smith had said, but it wouldn't reduce the school year by 10 days. It would only reduce the school year for students by 5 days.
but it would reduce the teacher's contract from 185 to 175.
Yes.
So that's my briefing. I'd be more than happy to answer any questions or provide any clarity I can.
We have 7 speakers who would like to speak to this item. If there's anybody else who's wishing to speak to this item, I'd like to have you bring your speaker slip up at this time, because I will be closing comments. Okay, then we will consider comments closed, and we will proceed with the speakers we have. You'll each have 3 minutes on this item, and Ms. Deacon will call your names.
Thank you. Our first speaker is Sylvia Gutierrez, followed by Paul Rooney, followed by Victor Garcia. And if you'd like to come up to the podium so that we can move through this, I'd appreciate it. So that would involve Mr. Rooney and Mr. Garcia also coming up to the podium now.
Good evening,
and waiting.
everybody. I'm Sylvia Gutierrez. I work at Cleveland School as a health assistant. I've been there about 13 years at the same site. And today, I've come to you several times trying to explain to you what health assistants do with the medically fragile medications, injuries, children with various health conditions. Today, I have a report which our health program has various reports we can run that show statistics. This is an event disposition statistics report, and it started July 14th to about maybe last week, because it takes time to roll over all the information. So I brought these for you to review, And on these reports, there are state mandates that we are required to do and enter the information, like vision and hearing, physical exams for kindergarten entry and first grade, and immunizations. The other thing I wanted to bring, I'm really into props. This is 1 month, January of 2011, of teacher notes that come into the health office. This does not include recess or PE classes. These are children with various things like pooped, feels like throwing up, eye hurts, headache, bloody nose, all the usual things that children happen to get in elementary school especially. This is for the month of December of 2010. Also, it has various things. I just want you to, you don't need to look at the names. All you need to do is flip and you see all the different things that children come in for during the day. Lost their tooth, rashes are big, and secretaries will have a really hard time doing their job if they have to do the health assistant's job. I know in elementary, it's a whole different ballgame from secondary. The children are younger every year. They come at 4.5 into our school because we're a year-round school. So we basically have babies. A lot of them are very immature. They may not have gone to preschool, and they require attention, and teachers simply do not have the time. Teachers want to teach. They don't want to deal with all these things. So that's why the health office is there, and we're sort of their backup to help them with children, the small, young children's issues that happen in the classroom, or they come to school sick, or they're losing their teeth, they have
30
cavities.
seconds.
And so I will give you these. And the last thing I want to say is there any way or reason why there are not more furloughs or cuts at the district level? Here I have the list of all the people that work at the district building, and if there's any way that maybe some cuts could come from there, you might be able to save some money there too.
Thank you, Mrs. Garcia, or Gutierrez, sorry. Followed by Victor Garcia, followed by Shireen Katapush. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you for hearing me tonight. I appreciate it. Thank you. I am honored to speak before you this evening. In light of the current financial difficulties you are posed with tonight, it is my duty as president of our CSEA Chapter 37 to ask for fairness in whatever you decide to do. As you already know, the cuts, if they happen, will be deep. Hopefully, our governor's agenda will be successful, and all of this will go away. In the meantime, I would ask you to pay heed to the classified percentage of the district's budget, not only not to demean or insult any other staff in the district, but the inequality that has been going on in the past few years has got to stop. If you bring back teachers, please include the support staff too. As a leader, I have to face my fellow employees and all their sad situations when I get the bad news. Who will I be able to face and tell them their jobs are safe? I will continue to advocate for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rooney. Victor Garcia. Is Mr. Garcia here? No. Okay. Shireen Katapush.
Good evening. My name is Shireen Katapush, and I'm the Director of Youth Services for the Council on Alcoholism and Drug Abuse. Victor is a student in one of our Reconnecting Youth classes at the high school, and it was my mistake. I thought that we'd be able to speak during public comment, and he had to go. But he was going to speak to you about the value of the work of the YSS and his personal benefit of being in the Reconnecting Youth class. I'm here to urge you to continue to support YSS in whatever way you can. You know that we have 8 YSS on the campuses. You help to support 4 of those positions. We need your partnership. The work that they provide on the campuses, the prevention, the intervention, the support and referral that they provide for students and families is so important, and more important now in these difficult times. So I want to thank you for 18 years of partnership and just urge you to continue to support the important work that our YSS do on the campus. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Katapush. Debbie Pentland, followed by Karen McBride, followed by Lane Wheeler.
Good evening. Again, I'm sorry that we're all here together to have to face such vital cuts. But one of the reasons that I'm presenting this evening is when you look at whether you're going to cut health assistant or nurses, there's a problem there because health assistants and nurses work as a team. And this team is meant to be able to keep the children safe during the day and meet all the ed code requirements. Unfortunately, the Education Code doesn't tell you or support how many nurses or auxiliary staff you need, but the Ed Code does have a lengthy list of all the health services that a school district is supposed to provide its children. And I brought these for you. The nurse has to do a nursing assessment, see what the student needs, to meet the 504 accommodations, to meet their IEP recommendations. Then they have to develop a plan with a physician. They have to train all the staff to carry out health procedures that they thought they were going to be just educators. But we have to make sure the staff is competent to do these skills, and you'll see the words in the Ed Code. Then the nurses have to go and make sure that they're doing the procedures right. We have to supervise them, make sure they're following through. Now, if the nurses were doing the health assistant's job, which is incredibly cumbersome, they take in 25, 30, 800 students a month with diseases, with maintaining immunizations, with following up with specialized health procedures like catheterization, like tracheostomy. The health assistants are skilled to back up any specialized health procedures we have. So the Ed Code certainly says that the nurses have, school credentialed nurses have specified jobs to do, and it can't be done by an RN, it can't be done by an LVN, and you'll see that. Because of the Ed Code, we can use health assistants. When nurses were taken out of the schools in the early 80s, there was no one, but more and more children came with more diabetes, more health problems. So what we did is develop a system of nurses setting up the structure, providing the guidance, making sure the children are safe.
30 seconds.
And the health assistants running the day-to-day. And if something goes wrong, those health assistants call us immediately, and we correct it. That's why you don't see lawsuits from health services. Neither the nurses or the health assistant are expendable. You will have a team with no quarterback, with no front end, and you won't meet the Ed Code. So I'll hand those out to you now.
Thank you, Mrs. Pentland. Karen McBride?
Hi. I'm a teacher at La Colina, and I want to talk about the YSS, the Youth Services Specialist, and the services they provide, I'm sure, on all of the secondary campuses, but my experience is witnessing them year after year at La Colina, and I know you have a lot of difficult choices to make, so I just want to put in a plug for them as you go down this very difficult road. The YSS at La Colina works super closely with a small group of students who are in very high-risk categories. As you know, they're kids who are known users of drugs and alcohol, kids who are sexually active, kids who are harming themselves, and kids who in so many cases have very unstable conditions in their homes that are compelling them to engage in these risky behaviors. And this is a very emotional issue for me because I see these kids come to school and they don't want to be there. They can't focus. It's not important to a kid in my class to know who fought in the War of 1812 and who won and who lost, when all they can think about is what's happening in their lives. The youth services specialist, they provide a place and a person who cares about these kids every day in a world where they feel like nobody cares. And I can tell you, unequivocally that some of these kids are coming to school because of that YSS. So when you look at the funding and when you look at cuts to ADA on a daily basis and kids who are not showing up at school, think about the ones that are coming to school because the YSS that's there. Think about the cost savings that you are realizing because there's somebody on campus that can be there when a kid can't sit in a classroom and focus anymore, or somebody who spends their lunch hour every single day, day after day, keeping these kids focused on the fact that in addition to the fact that they need to learn coping skills, they also need to understand the value of their academics. And these people are working so hard to keep these kids in school. And I just, I know that you appreciate them, but I'm right next to what they're doing, and they are a vital member of our team. I think that they also will provide services if you have to cut and increase the ratio of students to counselors. They're really helping a very challenged group of kids who need their services. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. McBride. Lane Wheeler.
Thank you. Lane Wheeler, President of the Santa Barbara Teachers Association. We have a simple message. Keep the cuts as far from the classroom as you possibly can. We appreciate some of the work that's gone into this document that you have before you. It certainly has identified ways to keep cuts from hurting students and families and the employees of our district. Obviously, there is going to be a point where you have to make tough decisions. SBTA has worked very closely with the district in the past. We will continue to work with the district to try to accomplish this. We have certainly done our part in the past. We feel like we've shouldered our part of the burden and more. And now we ask that you make the most conscientious and conservative cuts possible. We also realize very strongly our need and desire to get the budget from the state of California, the tax extensions, put before the voters of California to let these people have a chance to say if they want to see schools decimated and eviscerated like this document purports to do. We know it's not intentional, but we know you have a responsibility, but the harm that this is going to cause on our community and our schools will take years and years to overcome. So we ask that you will be respectful and conscientious in your decisions. We ask that you will do your very best to make decisions that are away from the classroom at whatever level that is. And we ask that you will, thank you for your work today to get the document to the legislators, and we'll ask all of our community members to step forward in that same regard and help us win that battle. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wheeler. And that concludes public comment.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your comments. Board members, are there questions or comments from the board? Ms. Parker?
Nobody wants to go first on this one. I want to say that in the 5 years now that I've been on the board, I've never had to cut $10 million at once. So this feels horrible, but I've also never had hope, the way I have hope this time, that almost all of these cuts could be rescinded. I'm trying not to be Pollyanna about it. I know that especially the June election could be something that we lose. So I'm very mindful of that, and we'll pay close attention over the next few weeks about what our community members are saying, what our employees are saying about the best possible way we can move forward with this. With that said, I think I'll go ahead and talk about specifics of the plan. There were two things that I, in particular, that I wondered why they weren't in there, and I'd like a little bit further information about. One was indeed, why do we not see cuts equivalent to the 5.04% for teachers across all of our employees, administrative and classified? So if you have that information, I think it would be great to see that now.
Yeah, we have that information. I think we started looking at where the point of attack was first, and then just didn't get to that point, but we have that information.
Great.
May I ask, are you asking about a reduced work year for all employees?
Well, I think it could be equivalent in the sense that for the teachers, it's not just a reduced work year.
Yes.
It's also an actual pay cut.
Yeah, it's
Right.
whether you want to call it a salary rollback, a furlough day, or whatever the case. And so what we put together is what we believe has some parity. Obviously, management has already taken 2 furlough days, so
Right.
we've added 8 more. And we've simulated 10 for classified, and you'll see those numbers as soon as Meg brings those up.
Now, classified has already taken 2.
They've taken one to offset health and welfare, not as a means to reduce the budget.
Okay.
So what I've done is I figured out how much would be 10 days for classified positions on the unrestricted side only, and that's at $3.8 million per cuts. Administrative, for 8 more days, because they've already taken 2, would be almost 190,000. And I can add those to our cover sheet if we want to put that up there now.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
So what we're trying to track is 2 things. One, we have the data here, and if that's something the board would like to see in a revision coming back in March 1st, we're trying to get consensus that that's what you want to see. I
Yes,
see a lot
please.
of heads nodding, so.
And while you're doing that, I'll ask my second question, because you probably don't have this data here. And in past years, we've looked at, when we've been doing budget cuts, the cost differential for the amount of money extra in FTEs that the district has supplied to run the block schedule at San Marcos. And so another question I have is, where are we right now in terms of how, if we are staffing San Marcos at a different level than the other 2 high schools? And if we are, can we have a budget item on eliminating district support for the block? Not necessarily eliminating the block, but extra support for it.
Yes, but it's more complicated than that. First off, SPTA's collective bargaining agreement, the class size cap is 33-1. You know, that's an average, as opposed to 35-1 at the other 2 comprehensive high schools. Then there's an issue of probably historically what we provided in terms of district support. So I guess they're probably intertwined somehow, and I'm not sure exactly, but we can come back and take a look at that and come back with some kind of proposal.
Let me give you an idea.
And I also
though.
think that's kind of implied in the discussion relative to credits in terms of the reduction. If the board chooses to ultimately reduce graduation requirements from 240 to 220, since we staff San Marcos to fully, roll out all those electives at 320, there's obviously an issue there as well.
Yeah. I'll give you a rough idea, and this is just rough. If we were to take the 1,800 students and divide it by the class average, which is 33 students per teacher, and then compare that to what we have at the other high schools, that same 1,800 students divided by 35-1 at the other high schools, that would be roughly 3 FTEs. Well, it's only 3 FTEs. On the other hand, 3 FTEs amounts to some $250,000.
Okay, thank you. And then I'll just run through, I have comments on just a few of these before I'll hand this off to the next person. On item B, the Tier 3 sweep, I personally, instead of seeing an across-the-board sweep, would prefer to see a targeted sweep. So that would mean looking at specific programs and positions and making decisions based on how we think that can happen.
Let me give you some food for thought, because I had this conversation with another board member. Because those dollars are allocated mostly to sites, if you do it on a programmatic basis, you may end up having an inequitable distribution in terms of where you reduce. You might want to look at the programs